What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the remote front office. Today we are going to be covering a tweet I had seen back on the 5th. But before we get into it, make sure to hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, turn the notifications on. We are Monday, Wednesday, Friday on this channel. So let's go ahead and get into it, right? So the tweet is from NBA Central. If you guys don't know, Twitter account that primarily does rumors or just kind of things around the league. And they had this tweet that had me thinking back on the 5th. And it, according to Hoops Hype, it is the most overpaid players of all time, right? And they have a top 10 listed. Go ahead and pause the video real quick and give me your guys' list. I think a couple people are going to be surprised / disgusted with names on this list. But I am curious your guys' list down below. But let's go ahead and get into it. We're going to go from 10 and we're going to go our way up, right? So we have Al Horford. I'm assuming this is more so for the Philly / OKC deal. Just because he essentially got sent home and didn't play for a couple of months, right? I understand that part of his contract being overpaid, right? Because he just didn't play a lot. But in the long run, it ended up helping him in Boston, right? Because he was able to get fully healthy, he was able to recover, and then he came to Boston and played really, really well. So, I mean, I think personally that right there kind of makes up for the overpay. Granted, I understand if you're Philly, that kind of makes you mad because you brought in the Embiid stopper in order to avoid having to play him and ended up biting you in the butt, right? The next guy I personally thought should have been a whole hell of a lot higher. Chandler Parsons. I'm assuming, obviously, this is from his Memphis deal. If you guys heard his interview with All the Smoke, I'd say probably a year or so ago, he was talking about how he ended up going to Memphis and why he went to Memphis. Essentially, it was because he knew his injury was worse than what it was initially listed as, and it was between them and Portland, and Portland was going to make him do a physical before they would sign him to the deal, right? Whereas Memphis said, screw it, here's the money, let's go. And so he pretended like, oh, I'm so excited to play for your organization, blah, 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 and signed that deal. Personally, I think that makes it worse because he knew beforehand that he wasn't going to play on this deal. So that's why I would have moved him up probably to like 2. Nicholas Batum, this is for his Hornets contract. Yes, it was an overpay. I'm not gonna lie. Again, it's another one I think should be higher, just because I know the contract so well. But I understand it because at least he was playing, he was available. But I just think for the level of production to get the $25 million he was getting at that time was absurd. Number 7 is Dikembe Mutombo. This one I'm not entirely sure what the year was, what year specifically they're talking about. So I'm just gonna have to take their word for that one. Kevin Love, I'm assuming this is the last deal that he was just on, right? The one that he got released from last year, that he got bought out from Cleveland and went to Miami on. I understand why you would think it's an overpay, but I don't necessarily think it's his fault, right? LeBron left, and Cleveland wanted to maintain good publicity, and so they brought him back. I don't necessarily think that's his fault. I think that's the organization's fault for not properly understanding of you've already lost Kyrie, you've lost LeBron. Why are we paying you to be the franchise guy when you're past your prime, right? I think that's more of an organizational fault rather than Kevin Love's fault. These next couple, I don't know entirely as far as what year they're referring to. Jawan Howard, I would assume, I'm not even going to speculate because I don't know which one that is. Tyson Chandler, same thing. I don't know which deal that's referring to. Number 3 is kind of crazy, but I understand it after I saw their response down below, right? They put Klay Thompson as 3. I think it's wild, right? But when somebody brought it up, they did mention that he played 32 games in 3 years while on a max contract. Makes a little bit of sense in my book. Just because obviously you're taking up that much of the salary cap. You didn't play for essentially, you played 30 games out of however many you want to do the math for, right? 200 something. So that part I understand. Yes, it was a bad deal. I just don't think it was 3, right? I think it was probably closer to like 5-ish range, right? Because when he came back, he looked okay. He didn't look great. But he still showed signs of at least the shooting side of Klay Thompson, right? And even if, say, he's not 100%, teams are still going to treat him like he's 100% offensively, right? So even if he's out there and he's not fully back yet, the fact that he's standing in the corner, teams are going to treat that like that's 50% Klay, right? They're going to treat him like that is still shoot it if you're open, it's going in Klay, right? So that's why I don't necessarily think he's as high on this as they actually have him. I think he's probably a little bit lower. The second one is Gordon Hayward. I'm assuming this is the Hornets deal, just because he got paid like $30 million a year, and he gets hurt for almost half the year every year. It feels like. The one thing I will say about this is when Gordon Hayward's healthy, he's still, I don't know if really good is the right word, but he's still very good, right? He still shows you flashes of what Gordon Hayward is, right? As far as handler, scorer, distributor, that all around forward, or offensively all around forward, that he was in Utah and that he kind of had a little bit of in Boston until he got hurt, right? So that one, I again think that's another one that's probably in like the 4 or 5 ish range. Parsons for me would have been 2 personally. But I just think that he's shown flashes when he plays. It's just he's not always available to play. And number 1 for Hoops Hype, most overvalued player or overpaid player, John Wall. I understand it because he was almost 50 million before all these superstars are going to be 50 million, right? I understand that part of it. However, he came to Houston ready to play. And Houston said, no, we're good. Just sit. We'll pay you. We'll pay you by all means. But just go sit at home. No, we're good. So, again, this is one where it's not necessarily on the player because the player showed up, the player was ready to work, and the team said, no, we're good. We're tanking. We have a direction. We just made the deal because the deal made sense for us. So if you could go sit at home and if we find a trade for you, we'll trade you. If not, we'll just cut you, right? And they ended up just buying him out. But I don't think that's necessarily his fault and that he should be put this on the list, right? Off of my experience personally, Chandler Parsons is 1. Batum's probably 2 or 3 off the list of guys they have. Kevin Love, again, it's not his fault, but he's probably 3. And then you go Klay, Gordon Hayward, Al Horford, and then the guys that were before I was really paying attention. I'm not going to count those guys. But that's my thoughts on the list. Let me know if you guys have a different order, if you guys think that this is different. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.